She cleaned her father's barn after his death. The day her father's will was read, Maya's world collapsed. Her white step-siblings got the mansions, cars, and fortune. She got a rotting barn and laughter in her face. But when she stepped into that dusty silence, something felt off. The floor creaked, the air shifted, and under the smell of hay and rust, a secret waited, one her father left only for her. Before we go any further, we'd love for you to hit that subscribe button. Your support means the world to us, and it helps us bring you even more powerful stories. Now let's begin. The funeral smelled of lilies and wet soil. Maya sat quietly in the second row, her hands gripping each other so tightly her knuckles turned white. Her father's coffin stood at the front, polished mahogany glowing under the dim church lights. Around her were faces she barely recognized, polite mourners dressed in black, whispering behind their tissues. The pastor's voice drifted somewhere behind the soft hum of gossip. "He left the company to the boys, right?" someone murmured. Another chuckled softly. "Of course. The girl barely counts." Maya heard them but said nothing. After the burial, the family gathered in the drawing room of the old farmhouse. Heavy drapes filtered the gray afternoon light. Her stepmother, elegant as ever, sat in the center, one hand resting on her pearl necklace. The lawyer cleared his throat, unfolding a set of documents. "According to the last will and testament of Mr. Richard Thompson," he began. The sons leaned forward, eyes glittering. "The mansion, vineyards, and vehicles," the lawyer continued, "go to Richard's sons from his first marriage." Their mother smiled, thin, satisfied, victorious. Then the lawyer hesitated. "And to Maya Thompson." He paused again, his eyes flicking to her. The old farmhouse and its adjoining barn. The silence that followed was cruel. Then laughter rippled through the room. "Guess she gets the hay," one brother snickered. "Maybe she'll find a horse to match," the other added. Maya's face flushed, but she kept her voice calm. Her stepmother leaned back, lips curling. "It's symbolic," she said smoothly. "Your father always said you were earthy." The laughter continued until the lawyer forced a polite cough. Maya stared at the paper in her trembling hands. 2 lines, that's all. 2 lines signed by the same man who once taught her to plant seeds and count constellations from the barn roof. Thunder rumbled outside. Maya stood, chair legs scraping across the marble floor. "I'll take what's mine," she said quietly. No one stopped her. The cold air hit her face as she stepped out. Behind her, laughter faded into the walls. By the time she reached her car, rain had begun to fall, thin streaks gliding down the windshield. She looked at the deed beside her, creased and smudged. For the first time that day, her lips curved into a faint smile. "All right, Dad," she whispered. "Let's see what you left me." The drive through the valley was a blur of rain and headlights. When she finally reached the edge of the property, the storm softened into mist. The farmhouse rose ahead, its paint peeling, roof sagging like an old memory refusing to fade. She parked near the barn, headlights slicing through the fog. The smell hit first, wet hay, rust, and the faint sweetness of oil and wood. The same scent from childhood afternoons when her father would whistle and fix tractors while she fed the horses. Now it was silent. She pushed the barn door open. The hinges groaned, and a gust of dust floated through the air like ghosts waking from sleep. Cobwebs hung thick across the rafters. Tools rusted against the walls. The place was dying. "Looks like nobody's cared for you in years," she murmured. She found an old broom leaning near a beam and began sweeping. Each motion stirred up the past, feed sacks with faded initials, rusted lanterns, a broken saddle. Her arms ached, but she didn't stop. By noon, sunlight streamed through the gaps in the roof, painting streaks of gold on the floor. Sweat dripped down her temples and her hands stung from blisters. She stopped near one of the beams and froze. There, carved deep into the wood, were initials, RT plus MT. Them was hers, carved when she was 9. Beneath it, the wood seemed chipped, as though something had once been pried loose. She traced her fingers over it, feeling a soft give. The sound of tires crunching on gravel made her heart jolt. She peered through a crack between the boards. A white SUV had pulled up near the farmhouse. Her stepmother and one of the brothers stepped out, umbrellas snapping open. They didn't come close. They just stood there surveying the land. "She can have this dump," the brother said. "Do you really think he meant to leave her anything of value?" His mother's reply cut through the air. "He was sentimental. Mistook pity for love." Maya crouched behind the hay bales, her pulse loud in her ears. When the car finally drove off, something inside her changed. The humiliation from that morning hardened into resolve. She wiped her face, walked to the tool bench and grabbed a rusted box. That's when she noticed it, one floorboard in the corner slightly lifted. Uneven. She pressed her boot against it. Moved. A hollow sound answered back, heart thudding. She knelt, brushing away the dust. The board lifted easily, revealing a small cavity beneath. Inside lay a brass key wrapped in oilcloth, and a folded note yellowed with time. She opened it carefully. Her father's familiar handwriting stared back at her. Where the earth meets its mirror, truth waits for its keeper. The words didn't make sense, but the ink looked recent. Fresh. Intentional. Maya sat back, the key glinting faintly in the dim light. For the first time since the funeral, grief wasn't hollow anymore. It was alive, pulsing with something new. Curiosity. She slipped the key into her pocket and looked around again. This time the air felt heavier, like the barn itself was holding its breath. "Okay, Dad," she whispered. "What are you trying to tell me?" Outside, the wind rose suddenly, sweeping hay across the clean floor like an answer. That night, the valley slept under a blanket of fog and silver light. The old farmhouse moaned with every gust of wind, and Maya sat wide awake by the window, the folded note resting in her palm. Where the earth meets its mirror, truth waits for its keeper. She repeated the words over and over, but they refused to make sense. Her father had always spoken in riddles, when teaching her lessons about patience or life, but this one felt different. Urgent. Outside, moonlight spilled across the barn roof like liquid glass. Something about the phrase earth and mirror kept circling her mind. By 2 a.m. she couldn't take it anymore. She slipped on her father's old jacket, grabbed a flashlight and stepped into the night. The ground squelched under her boots. The air was sharp and wet, carrying the scent of soil and hay. Crickets whispered in the grass as she crossed the field. When she reached the barn, the door gave a low creak. Inside, it was colder than before, her breath fogging faintly in the beam of her flashlight. Dust motes swirled like spirits in the still air. She traced the light along the floor, across the hay bales and the tool bench, until it caught something strange, a thin crack running through the concrete near the back wall. It was narrow but deliberate, just wide enough to catch the light. Maya knelt and brushed the surface. The concrete shifted slightly beneath her hand. Her pulse quickened. She shoved the stacked crates aside, the wood scraping loudly in the silence. When she pressed her palm against the crack again, the section lifted with a faint click. A rush of stale air hit her face, cold, metallic and old. Below the lifted panel, narrow wooden steps descended into darkness. Maya hesitated, every instinct screaming to turn back. But curiosity, no faith, pulled her forward. Her father had left that key, that message. He wanted her to find this. She took a breath, flicked on her flashlight and started down. The staircase groaned under her boots, leading into a low tunnel lined with dirt and wooden beams. Cobwebs brushed her face as she ducked her head. The deeper she went, the more she could smell damp earth and something faintly chemical, oil maybe, or paint. Finally, the tunnel opened into a small underground room. The ceiling was low, the walls reinforced with planks, and in the middle stood shelves stacked with metal boxes, all sealed and labeled in her father's handwriting. She aimed her flashlight at the nearest one. Harvest Logs, 2009. Another read, CO. Records, confidential. But it was the box in the corner that froze her breath. It was smaller than the others, cleaner somehow, as if it had been handled recently. And on its lid, in thick black ink, was one word. Maya. Her throat tightened. She crouched and unlatched the box. Inside lay a stack of folders tied neatly with twine, a bundle of letters and an old digital recorder. Hands trembling, she pressed the play button. Static filled the room, then, his voice. Warm. Familiar. Steady. "If you're hearing this, it means I couldn't tell you in person," her father's voice said. "The company is yours, Maya. I built it under your name years ago. Your stepmother's been trying to move assets. This was the only way to keep it safe." Maya's heart slammed against her ribs. "Everything I couldn't protect above ground, I hid down here. These documents prove ownership, shares, ledgers, the transfer papers. Trust the barn, sweetheart. It's protected what mattered most since the beginning." The recording clicked softly, and for a few seconds she could almost hear him breathe. "You were always the one with heart," he said finally. "That's why I trusted you." Then silence. Maya pressed her hand against her mouth, tears blurring her vision. The old flashlight flickered weakly, casting shadows across the boxes. He hadn't abandoned her. He had protected her. Every cruel laugh, every mocking glance at the will reading, none of it mattered anymore. Her father hadn't left her scraps. He'd left her everything. She opened one of the folders. Inside were stamped documents, sealed by notaries, showing Maya Thompson as majority shareholder of Thompson Holdings Limited, the company that technically owned every property, estate and vehicle in the family. She stared at the pages, her mind spinning. He must have hidden this because he knew. He knew they'd try to take it. Her fingers brushed over another folder, financial records, land deeds, a list of accounts tied to offshore trusts. At the bottom lay a small photograph, her and her father standing in front of the barn, smiling. On the back, in his handwriting, "Keep the roots safe, they'll outgrow everything else." She sat there for a long time, letting the words sink in. When she finally climbed back up the stairs, dawn was creeping in through the cracks in the barn walls. Soft light spilled across the floorboards, turning the dust into gold. She blinked against it, clutching the folder to her chest. Her boots hit the ground with new purpose. She wiped her cheeks, straightened her jacket, and looked toward the farmhouse that loomed in the distance. They thought she had nothing. They were wrong. As the sun rose behind her, she felt the warmth on her skin like her father's hand on her shoulder. For the first time in weeks, the weight in her chest lifted. "You outsmarted them all, didn't you, Dad?" she whispered, a small smile curling on her lips. The wind blew through the open doorway, scattering bits of hay, almost like laughter. She turned toward the farmhouse on the hill, her stepmother's fortress, and pocketed the key. The storm was still coming. But this time it was hers to command. By sunrise, the valley shimmered with dew. Maya sat at the kitchen table of the old farmhouse, the documents spread out before her, certificates, ledgers and sealed ownership records, each stamped with her father's signature. The faint tick of the wall clock was the only sound. She poured herself a cup of coffee, hands trembling as she read the same line again. Principal shareholder, Maya Thompson. Her phone buzzed on the counter. A message flashed from her stepmother. "Don't embarrass yourself with that barn nonsense. We're meeting the estate lawyers today." Maya smiled faintly, sliding the folder shut. "You'll be meeting me," she whispered. By 10 a.m., she walked into the conference room of the downtown law firm. The place reeked of wealth, polished oak tables, leather chairs, framed certificates gleaming under recessed lights. Her stepmother sat at the head of the table, flanked by her two sons and a pair of lawyers. Maya entered quietly, her father's worn leather folder in hand. The air in the room felt sharp, electric. "Miss Thompson," one of the attorneys greeted, his tone dripping with politeness. "We understand you're contesting the will?" "Not the will," Maya said calmly. "The ownership." The lawyer frowned. "I beg your pardon?" She opened the folder and began laying out the papers, one by one. Each page bore her father's signature, notarized, dated years before his death. The lawyers leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Her stepmother's painted smile faltered. "What is this?" she demanded. "The real inheritance," Maya said softly. "The company your husband built, our father's company, is legally under my name. Thompson Holdings owns every property, estate and asset connected to his business empire. Which means," she looked up, voice steady, "I own it." For a heartbeat, silence filled the room. Then one of the brothers barked a laugh. "You're bluffing. Dad would never." "Check the registry," Maya interrupted, sliding over a certified copy. The lawyer at the end of the table took it, eyes widening as he read. "These are authentic seals," he said quietly. "Registered and notarized under corporate law, 3 years before the new will." Her stepmother's hand trembled as she reached for the papers. "He was old," she snapped. "He didn't understand what he was signing." Maya's gaze was calm but sharp. "He understood perfectly. He knew what you were capable of." The eldest brother stood, knocking his chair backward. "This doesn't change anything," he shouted. "We have the house, the cars, the—" Maya cut in, her voice low but commanding. "You have the names on the titles. I have the name that owns them." A heavy silence settled. The lead attorney cleared his throat. "Legally speaking," he said, "Miss Thompson holds controlling interest in all family assets." Her stepmother's face drained of color. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "You're making enemies you can't handle." Maya gathered the papers into her folder. "I've already survived being their joke," she said. "I can handle being their truth." As she turned to leave, the same lawyer who once read the will called out quietly, "Miss Thompson, your father would be proud." Maya paused in the doorway, the sunlight catching her hair. "He already is," she said and walked out. By evening the story had spread like wildfire. Farmer's Hidden will reveals secret heir. Local news anchors repeated her name. Reporters camped near the gates of the old estate. The stepmother filed for an appeal, but the evidence was ironclad: dates, seals, recordings. One by one her allies vanished, her lawyers withdrew, and within weeks the court confirmed what Maya already knew. She owned everything. The house, the land, the company, all of it was hers. But power didn't feel like victory. Not yet. She returned to the barn one quiet afternoon, the air warm with the scent of rain and cut grass. Sunlight poured through the cracks in the roof, turning the dust into gold. She ran her fingers along the same beam that bore their carved initials, RT plus MT. The wood felt smooth now, familiar, almost alive. "You really trusted me with everything, didn't you?" she whispered. For the first time since his death, she didn't feel grief. She felt peace. Over the next few weeks, she restored the land, painting the doors, fixing the fences, planting flowers by the windows. The barn no longer smelled like rust and sorrow. It smelled like home. Then one late afternoon a car pulled into the drive. Her two stepbrothers stepped out, no suits, no arrogance. Just quiet faces and tired eyes. The older one held out a small box. "We found this," he said. "Dad's pocket watch. Mom said he lost it, but..." He trailed off. Maya opened the box gently. Inside lay the old silver watch, polished clean, still ticking. "He trusted time," she murmured. And time proved him right. They stood there for a long moment, the wind carrying the scent of fresh rain. No apologies were spoken, but none were needed. When they finally left, Maya watched their car disappear beyond the hill. The ache she had carried for years slowly began to fade. That evening she sat on the barn steps, the horizon burning gold with the setting sun. She held the pocket watch in her hand, its rhythm steady and soft. "He didn't leave me a barn," she said quietly, looking toward the horizon. "He left me proof that love outlives greed." Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled across the valley, deep, soft, like applause from the sky. The barn doors creaked gently in the wind, closing on the past and opening to everything ahead. If you believe that truth always finds its way to light, no matter how deeply it's buried, share Maya's story. Because sometimes what looks like nothing is the inheritance that changes everything.